Welcome to all Caribbean entrepreneurs. If you've been ready and waiting to take your business digital and get paid online while you sip something strong on the beach, this podcast is for you. We'll hear from the Caribbean's finest entrepreneurs on topics like e-commerce, business development, brand building, social media, their wins and failures. This is the only place in the region helping you navigate the digital age from the Caribbean's perspective. This is Digipreneur FM. And now, let's give it up for the Digiboss himself, Mr. Karan Rose.
Thank you to everybody tuning in to another episode of the Digipreneur FM podcast. And as usual, it is your boy, Mr. Rose. And DJ, you know what to do. You gotta fade us all the way out so we can talk to the people. It is January 26th. It's a Monday. And it is episode number 198. How are you good people in the Digipreneur family doing? How are y'all doing? I know y'all seen that notification pop up and you're like, what? Homeboy is back. Homeboy is getting on. We're getting episodes consistently again. New year, new me, baby. Nah, on the real though, I started this podcast back in 2021, right? About June 2021. And can't even believe that we're going on 5 years already. Like, that is just absolutely insane, right? But for the first 2.5 years of the podcast, I was dropping pretty much 2 episodes a week. And then when travel really started to get in the way, I don't want to say the consistency dropped off because I was still dropping episodes, but it wasn't as frequent, as my usual 2 episodes a week. But in the last episode, I know I spoke about how I would be dropping at least 1 episode a week. But you know what? Just to start really building back up my prowess in creating for all different formats, I feel like I may be closer to that 2 episodes a week, but we'll see how it goes. I'm pushing myself to do 2 because there's so much to talk about, because there's so many things happening and so many things changing. And most times when I see some of these changes, the only way to really dive into it is long form, and long form through a podcast. Yes, I just dropped 2 videos on YouTube. I dropped a vlog that I did yesterday on Sunday. That was, again, just trying to get back and building up my that content muscle for all mediums. So I create for all mediums, but for the past couple of months, I've been slacking on the podcast and my video content. So those are 2 areas that I want to really, I really want to beef back up and start flexing those muscles again, or exercising those muscles, I should say. So go check out the latest vlog that we just dropped on the channel. But there's just so many things changing, and as I'm seeing what's going on, I'm seeing what's happening internationally, and I'm seeing how things are impacting us regionally, and then also within our own Caribbean islands. Again, there's just so much to talk about. And one of the things that, or one of the ideas that just kept on popping up this week, thinking about the Trinidad and Tobago market, there's been so many increases or so many changes to policies that are impacting all of us, not even just from a cost of life perspective, but they're impacting us from a business perspective. And there's going to be some real ripple effects. So this week, or last week, I should say, Trinidad and Tobago government announced that the National Gas Company was going to be increasing their or I should say, reducing the subsidy, because it was a subsidy that they were giving out to the manufacturing sector in Trinidad and Tobago, and they announced that they're going to be reducing that subsidy by 70%. And obviously, the manufacturing sector is up in arms because the first thing they're quarreling about is, well, how else they're going to be able to be sustainable. This is going to force layoffs. This is going to drag the economy down even further if they don't get these subsidies. And again, it's really interesting because when you think about the businesses that we tend to create in the Caribbean or tend to have, a lot of it is really based on some key factors that could change. And now that those factors are changing, so for example, in the case of the manufacturing sector, there's a lot of companies that got into manufacturing because gas was cheap in Trinidad, and gas has been cheap because we have gas or we have oil. Gas has been cheap for quite some time, so it was a safe bet to get into manufacturing because your core inputs were low. But now that the climate has changed and resources have dried up or drying up, and we're not producing as much oil as we used to, we don't have much money coming in. Uh, the government is saying that the subsidies that we have been affording the nation can no longer happen, and they've been reducing and increasing things all across the board. But this big one, this big piece of news, that 70% reduction in the subsidy, this is going to force everybody that's in manufacturing, that manufactures products to sell locally and also internationally. This is going to now force them to rethink all of their operations, because if you got into the business because gas was cheap at a particular point in time, right, and it made sense, this is not to demonize anybody, but again, it made sense at the time. But now that structurally your inputs have gone up, and if a key input in manufacturing was gas, being able to get access to that subsidized gas, well, things have changed. And they're not changing these are not temporary changes. The changes that are happening throughout the world and domestically are fundamental changes. So what it got me thinking about for the past couple of days is, where should businesses go from there? Because our businesses predominantly have been made up of oil and gas businesses, tourism businesses, and some of the in most of the other islands and whatnot. And then a whole lot of reseller businesses, right? So because the makeup of the majority of the big businesses, if we're talking Trinidad as an example, oil and gas, problems there. Tourism, we've never really been that. Then we have the majority of our bigger businesses, our bigger conglomerates are all resellers of international products. You know, all of these things are getting more expensive. And now it's at a point where things fundamentally have to change. So this year is going to be a year that forces real introspection, because every country in the Caribbean has no choice but to look at themselves in the mirror, because with rising costs, with geopolitical instability, and with AI, artificial intelligence, changing work faster than people can adapt, with trade routes shifting, with energy shocks happening all throughout the market, inflation is no longer, feeling temporary. And this is hitting us in the region harder because for a long time we have relied on systems that only worked when the environment was friendly and we had a lot of things propping us up. Things like cheap energy, stable shipping, predictable tourism, government employment as a safety net, Import heavy business models that assumed access to foreign exchange would always be there. Well, guess what? 2026 is here and that world is gone. And you know, this episode is not about, trying to scare you, but this episode is putting everything on Front Street so that we can look at it, we can name it, we can recognize it for what it is, and then we can move on from here. Because once we recognize the reality that we are in, we can then start to make better choices, especially when it comes to the types of businesses that we create. And that's where this episode is really going to be going. What types of businesses should should we be creating in 2026? Now, this is not about, this I'm not saying we're going to be stopping manufacturing locally, don't focus on tourism. These things are going to be there in some capacity, but there has to be a major pivot, because as we go through this episode, you will see that a lot of the businesses that we have, that we built our economies off of, they were great for the time that they were in, but things have changed so much in 2025 and in 2026 that we need to rethink all of our plans moving forward. So now anybody that is looking to start a business needs to start thinking about, am I creating the right type of business for the world that we are entering into? Because if you think that you could just go and start up a buy and sell business, or you're just going to go and start making products, you definitely want to listen to this episode, because we have a lot of bottlenecks that we need to address that are handicapping our current businesses. And if you don't understand what those bottlenecks are, you're gonna go out there and you're gonna start another business that is susceptible to the bottlenecks and to the shocks that are happening. And then you're just gonna run into problems that you probably will not be able to overcome. So that's why for this episode, we really want to dive into what types of businesses should we be creating in the Caribbean. All right. So across the entire region, when people talk about entrepreneurship, the same business ideas come up over and over and over again. And we know them. It's the buy and sell businesses, or somebody wants to start up a business or a side hustle. And what do? They get into the food business. They start selling food. Or again, they try to open up retail operations. We see a lot of franchises that we have, imported from America and whatnot. Or we just open up retail stores, right? Again, buy and sell businesses, or we decide that we want to create a product and we start importing raw materials to create our quote unquote local artisan products, right? And to be clear, there is nothing wrong with these businesses in principle. My thing is, they made sense in a world where the costs were lower, where there was ample money flowing into our region and the demand was strong. And we chose them because they are familiar, they're easy to understand, and we've seen how people have built these types of businesses over the years. So there was a blueprint to follow, there was best practices to follow, and they provide relatively good and fast cash flow back to you. You go and purchase some Victoria's Secret or some Bath and Body Works stuff, those things are gonna fly off of your hands pretty quickly, right? So a lot of the buy and sell businesses were able to turn product around pretty quickly and get some fast cash flow. But now, familiarity does not equal sustainability in these times, because most of these businesses depend heavily, if not all, on imports, foreign brands, foreign inputs, and foreign currency. So even when something is said to be local, Many of the raw materials, the equipment, the packaging, and the licenses are paid for in USD, or again, we have to import these things to be able to produce a lot of the products that we create. And that dependency is the crack in our foundation. Think about the times that we are in. We have structural problems and they're currently breaking. So we're not going to be blaming anybody. They built businesses at times when it made sense to build those types of businesses. But now, in the times that we are in, there are some economic fallouts with the types of businesses that we have predominantly in our region, and they're handicapping us. So, how are they handicapping us? Well, for one, and we already know this, we are import heavy. We are heavily dependent on imports and foreign exchange. And most traditional Caribbean businesses earn in local currency but spend in foreign currency. Inventory, the inputs, the equipment, the franchise fees, spare parts, all of these things are purchased in US dollars because, again, most of the things we do not create. If you open up a bakery and you want to go and buy a big mixing, a big thing to go and mix dough, we don't manufacture these things. You got to use foreign exchange to go and order your equipment, to go and staff to go and get your equipment to go and start your business. All right, essentially. So even when the economy looks busy, foreign exchange leaks out all over the place, right? Now, this is okay when we know the economy is rock solid and we have foreign exchange coming in. Like when oil and gas was booming in Trinidad and Tobago, the restrictions were not nearly as bad. We had restrictions, but it wasn't nowhere near as bad as it is today, right? But here's the thing. As you have seen over the years, all of the banks reducing foreign exchange allocations here in Trinidad, and it comes down to the simple fact the country is not earning the money it used to make all of those years ago because our economy was built up of oil and gas, petrochemicals. So when we were when we were at our height producing however many barrels of oil a day and money was coming in, things are good. But now we're not producing as many barrels, money is not flowing into the system, and the government is the largest employer in our country. And in most Caribbean, I think all Caribbean countries, one of our biggest downfalls is that the government is the largest employer. So they're not necessarily, the government is not the one that's usually creating businesses that get outside money. It's usually going to be the entrepreneurs creating businesses and then going and selling their services or products on the international market, and they tend to bring that money back in. And the role of the government is to create the environment for these things to happen. But when your government is your largest employer, we're not bringing in new money. Money's just circulating in the economy, and if not enough money is coming in, then again we're going to have layoffs, which is exactly what we are seeing across the board, right? So we have a dependence on inputs, and because of those dependence on for because of those dependence, and we have to import everything. There's always foreign exchange leaking out in every possible manner. Now, the second thing is that rising costs are happening across the board. So we are now operating in a world where shipping costs are volatile. Think about all the shipping routes and how much active conflicts are happening. We don't have to look far. Next door, we have the largest collection U.S. Armada that has assembled in over, I think, 60 or 70 years or some craziness like that. And that's happening right outside our border. But anytime regions become active in conflict, costs for shipping rise. As we have seen with NGC straight up said that we have been subsidizing the costs for energy for a long time. We can no longer afford to do that. So energy costs are rising. Insurance, logistics, trying to ship in and out of the Caribbean is a very expensive affair. We are one of the more expensive regions to get things to and from. So logistics is a huge thing too. And those fees play a key part in how we can, in the cost of imports, and then how much it's going to cost to export our goods. So these things are expensive. So when you're hearing NGC come out and say that they can no longer afford a subsidy and they are reducing the subsidy by 70%, that is a signal for what is happening right now. And it shows what happens when a business ecosystem was built around artificially low inputs and those supports disappear. Many of the businesses in Trinidad and Tobago worked because the environment has been subsidized to allow for the creation of our goods so that we can be competitive. But now that the world has changed and is changing, we can no longer afford the level of subsidies that we have been giving out. And now businesses are hands in the air, and they're obviously frustrated because they know that without the favorable environment, their business is going to have to transform, and it's going to have to transform into be something sustainable, or they're going to have to close down. But in that transformation, we know that people, processes, and technology all have to change. And when these companies start reviewing the people that they need in terms of skill sets that they need inside of the country, when they start reviewing their processes, when they start analyzing what software, what tools, what technology do we need in our business to run our business sustainably, efficiently, economically, so that we are profitable, they're going to be looking at what types of tools do they need for the tasks that have to happen within the business. And when they start looking at the tasks that they need done, and they start seeing which tools, which software automation that they can put in place, that's going to fundamentally change the types of people that their organization needs moving forward, and how many people do they need moving forward. So this is why you are seeing globally companies are starting to not just downsize, but they're running leaner. And I think that's the framing that we have to understand and come to terms with, because companies are not just downsizing because they're wicked. Most of these companies are downsizing because with the maturity of the technology that's available to us now that we have artificial intelligence in the mix, and then even outside of just AI tools, but there's been so much automation software that's available for us now more than ever, that businesses can run leaner, more efficiently with the right tools, the right software, and the right skill sets of people, right? A lot of our companies have not been upgrading their people, processes, or technology over the years. And because they have not done that, now that we have reached this inflection point in 2026, what was going to be gradual changes over the years is going to be sharp, decisive action happening now. And what companies are going to realize is that with this new environment that we are in, the vast majority of them are not going to be sustainable in this new climate. And we're going to see a lot more closures happening. I do believe we'll see more closures than transformation. And I mainly say that because I think a lot of the businesses that we created were created for a particular point in time, and they might not translate well into the new climate that we are in. For example, a reseller business. People can order their goods online. They do not have to go through a reseller to purchase products. Like if I want to go and order CeraVe, I don't have to go into a local store and purchase it. I could order it online from anywhere in the world, and I'd have access to a wide variety. I would have access to sales. I would just have access to more. And the only time I would look to buy locally that product is if I needed it right now. But chances are, because of the amount of costs it takes for companies to bring their shipments in and bring their goods in, the pricing is not always competitive, and we know that, and that's why you see these skybox companies have been growing over the years. They're when you look at what happens for the holidays in terms of shopping, it's all the local businesses complaining that the numbers no longer there. We've seen companies across the region complain that sales for products and goods were slow this Christmas. But the skybox companies are rammed out, and it's because more people are purchasing online. They're getting exactly what they want. They have access to the variety, and they have access to sales and better pricing. And they realize it's just better for them to order online and then just pay whatever they have to pay at the customs versus buying it locally. So these things are going to force businesses, especially the reseller businesses, to really look at their books and see if their business makes sense moving forward. That's just an example, right? Customers have choices, so they don't have to shop locally. They can go online. However, this is why, especially in Trinidad, because we're going online more and the country itself is not generating enough money and we have lower foreign exchange reserves available to be used by the public, they have these hard caps on our credit cards. But everybody loses when there's these hard caps on the credit cards. Because again, not everybody's just using it for consumption. There are many of our businesses, especially small to medium sized businesses, that rely on their credit cards to conduct their business. Right? They don't have free reign of or full access to foreign exchange. They have a hard cap. And when your business is susceptible to caps on how much money you can access to handle your business on the international market, there's only so much that your business can grow because now you're effectively limited to what you could use on a credit card. So if that's $2,500 and you could only purchase 2,500 US worth of stuff or worth of goods or worth of services so that you can conduct your business with hard caps, it limits how your business can grow and if it can grow. Heck, businesses might not even be able to run if they don't have access to the foreign exchange needed, right? So that's what's happening in Trinidad. A lot of these businesses are struggling to stay afloat and some are closing down simply because they don't have access to foreign exchange to then be able to restock or to run their business. And obviously, if businesses can't purchase product, and since most of our businesses are reseller businesses or buy and sell businesses, if you don't have access to foreign exchange to bring your stocks in, then effectively you don't have stock, which means you have nothing to sell, which means you don't have a business, yada, yada, yada. We know how that goes, right? This is how the economy continues to slow. It's continuously slowing down because we don't have enough people bringing in more foreign exchange, but we have more people consuming it. So there's that mismatch that's happening. And here's the thing too. And this is not just this goes for the entire region. Tourism is no longer a safety net. Now, tourism is still important, but here's the thing. Tourism has never been more competitive than it ever has been. We in the Caribbean also are seeing the full effects of climate change, right? Just look at what happened to Jamaica. Jamaica is going to take over I think it was like $8 billion US dollars to go and rebuild. Where is Jamaica getting the money from, right? They're going to have to go and borrow it. They're going to have to move some things around to go and get that, to then go and rebuild up. But here's the thing. Whilst they're rebuilding, they could still get hit with another hurricane. We're not just we can't just pick up and move Jamaica or move the islands outside of this zone that we are in. So when we get hammered by climate change, it impacts investment because now investors are just going to be like, well, it doesn't make sense for me to go and spend money in that country, and then hurricane Hurricane Jackie, Hurricane Christina, all of them pass through in a couple of weeks, and then your money just goes up in smoke, right? So, because we are client vulnerable, because we are dependent on imports, because tourism is more competitive than ever before, people are going all over the world now. Look, Vietnam in 2025 had their highest record of tourists coming to the country. At over 21 million foreign guests came into Vietnam for 2025. These countries can scale tourism to a point where it really impacts the GDP. We in the Caribbean, we don't pull in those types of numbers. Now we get people, and relative to our population sizes, tourism can, it can bring in some money. The thing is that it's just not the safest thing anymore because of how competitive it is and because of how dependent we are on inputs that are outside of our control. Look, the other day when they took the president from Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, when they took him, the FAA for America, they put an entire 24-hour restriction on all American airline carriers. Nobody could fly into the region. There was over 300 plus flights that canceled that day. Millions, hundreds of millions of dollars lost just because of that 24-hour ban. And then 2 days after that, they put out another notice saying that there is active conflict in our area. So airlines have started to cut down American airline carriers have cut down the amount of flights coming into the region. All of these things are impacting us. They're impacting tourism. And here's the thing. Our reputation also takes a hit because now that people have more options, people are just saying to themselves, well, you know what? I could come back to the Caribbean when things seemed more settled. Let me just go somewhere else. And they will spend their money elsewhere and just go somewhere else. And that's the thing. This is not a knock on the Caribbean. This is just what it is right now. So even tourism is not a safety net right now. And again, it's not even an industry that in Trinidad we've ever really built up, but it can't it's not going to be what we just keep on screaming out loud. Like, they have options. We need to start really thinking about the new economy and what we can start to build sustainably. Yes, manufacturing can still be something we do. Yes, tourism can still bring in whatever it needs to bring in, but we're going to have to shift the main ways that we earn income. I would feel a lot more comfortable if tourism was the fourth and fifth thing that was generating money for us, but we had much, much, much more sustainable ways that we can generate revenue for the country. All right. Now, here's some other things that are making 2026 a year where where we really have to reassess everything. Artificial intelligence and digital transformation. So here's where things are accelerating for us. Because across the Caribbean, many businesses and institutions are still very manual process based, they're paper based, they're slow, and they're human capital resource heavy. So as digital systems finally get implemented, something happens. Processes become visible, they become measurable, inefficiencies become visible and measurable, and redundancies start to appear. And this is what happens when you really start to implement your systems. So AI is not just eliminating jobs, it is eliminating tasks. And since many Caribbean jobs are still task heavy, when we start to implement new processes, new technologies, you're then going to be forced to look at the people, and you're going to see which are the right people, the right collection of skilled labor do you need? And if that person that is in a particular role where a bunch of their tasks have now been made redundant because of of technology, if that person is not willing to upskill or reskill so that they can move into another part and bring value to the company, then the company is going to have no choice but to get rid of them. And that's just the life cycle of business, right? Now, for the companies that are dealing with unions, the unions have been pushing back hard, especially in the Caribbean, because they do not want their members to be without a job. They also don't want to lose their union dues. So they force a lot of the companies to stay as is. And because the unions force a lot of the companies to stay as is, try to transform without cutting people, it doesn't allow companies to truly transform. Because again, AI is not eliminating jobs, it's eliminating tasks. And a job, a role, is a collection of tasks. So if we bring in a tool or automation or whatever that is more efficient, gets the job done faster, and it handles these set of tasks that were originally assigned to you, the company now has to sit down and say, okay, AI has taken away this set of tasks. Now they got to look at what you have left over. And is what you left over, is it still, what is the value of that to the company? Okay, this isn't valuable. We could absorb you into other people or other things or whatever the case is. So can we upskill you? Can we reskill you? Can we move you to a different part of the company? But again, if you aren't willing to do that, or maybe you are upskilling, but you are upskilling for a completely different industry. These are the types of things that are going to be forced for us to really look at in 2026. Businesses are going to be forced to ask themselves, who do we actually need, and what are the skill sets that we need? What are the skills that are transferable, and what roles no longer make sense? And this transformation could have been gradual if we were doing it over the years, but because we have not been upgrading our people, processes, and technologies over the years, we delayed it. And now that transformation is going to hit hard in 2026, which is why we are seeing so much layovers across so many different sections. And what is the plan to get new jobs back into the economy? Well, again, this is where we're going with the episode, right? So here's the pivot that has to happen for the Caribbean because we are a collection of small island developing states. We need to start becoming a service-based economy. And this is where the opportunities appears because service-based businesses don't depend on shipping containers. They don't rely on imports of raw materials. They aren't energy intensive, and they are not capped by the size of our population. They allow us to earn globally and spend locally. And let's be honest, service-based businesses, they still have some foreign exchange costs because we don't create any of the tools that we use. So we still use ChatGPT. That's foreign exchange that we got to use to pay for that every month. We use Canva. We use CapCut. We use Descript. We run ads. So we there's a lot of tools that we use to run our businesses. And I just named a bunch of marketing tools, but you know what I mean. Everybody has tools that they pay for, subscriptions that they pay for, right? Or platforms that they use, or cloud services that they use. AWS, Google Drive, OneDrive, Apple Drive, one, whatever. You know what I mean? So service-based businesses still have foreign exchange costs, but the key difference is that in physical businesses, foreign exchange is your lifeblood, right? Because you have to stock your physical stores. When you have a service-based business, your foreign exchanges really comes down to utility bills and subscriptions. And that ratio matters because a service-based business might spend 100 to 300 US per month on tools, but they could earn 3,000 to 10,000 US per month from global clients, bringing that money into the economy. And that creates net forex generation and is not actually draining the economy. That difference is huge. That's massive because when you are getting into creating a product, manufacturing a product, becoming a buy and sell business or becoming a reseller business, those businesses are so cap heavy, and they're cap heavy, and they usually need what? Foreign exchange to go and use, to then go and import, whether it be raw materials, machinery, stock. And again, I'm not saying that these things are going to go away. What I'm saying is we have to start a pivot because right now our economy is lopsided. It's with businesses that use up too much foreign exchange. We have too many reseller businesses. We have too many buy and sell businesses. We don't have enough businesses that are foreign exchange generating businesses. Right? And even when you are making a product to then go and ship out to the world, because we still have so much imports that we have to get in order to create that particular product. And then again, we live in the Caribbean, so importing and exporting physical goods has a cost associated with it. When all of these inputs start to change, will a small business or medium-sized business, will they even be able to afford the export costs to get their product out? Or will they have to raise the fees or the cost of their goods, and then it's no longer competitive on the market, which is exactly what the local manufacturing sector is saying with this increase from NGC. Yes, you can complain about it, but at the end of the day, if the company simply doesn't, if they can no longer afford to subsidize the fees and they have to charge you market rate, well, you now have to adjust to your new reality. And that new reality is going to completely change the landscape of our economy in Trinidad and Tobago. Because, like I said, many of the businesses, when they sit down and they review their operations, they are going to realize they are no longer sustainable without massive, massive changes to their people, their process, and their technologies in order to be profitable, in order to continue to run and turn a profit. And if they've crunched the numbers and they realize that it's not making any sense, then they're just going to pull out and they're going to move their money into something else. But the pivot is where we need to get to. So, what types of businesses make sense for the Caribbean right now? And this is why I'm stressing that we need to focus more on service-based businesses because they solve real global problems, they build transferable skills, and they can scale beyond one market. They also are not susceptible to the same bottlenecks that many of our Caribbean islands have. If you have a service-based business and you are building websites, for example, then you do not need a heavy amount of foreign exchange to get you started. Somebody could, start a Canva-based business where they're creating content for somebody. They could even be doing that on the free version of Canva or using free tools to do their graphic design business or their video editing business. They could use free tools, and now you're not even using up any foreign exchange to get started. Heck, you might have learned the skill from YouTube or free courses and just playing around with the tools itself. But now you're able to provide a service that generates foreign exchange. And again, I'm just saying somebody could start out and use free tools and not even have to use up any foreign exchange. Versus the previous types of businesses we always get into are all cap investment heavy and they use up a whole lot of foreign exchange. So service-based businesses, They can solve real problems globally. They build on transferable skills and they can scale beyond one market. So, what are some types of global or service based businesses that we should be getting into? So, we need to go beyond thinking about operation support. Sorry, we need to go beyond thinking about, opening up the latest call center. Like, we have iCore in Trinidad. So we need to go beyond thinking about call centers. Some of the things that we can be getting into for global digital services are operation support, research assistance, analytics, customer success, AI assisted workflows, whether you are building out, and that's going to be the big one. If you can build out AI assisted workflows for companies, well, you're sitting on a golden ticket right now, right? Marketing and content services, so getting into the strategy, performance based marketing, search engine optimization or AI optimization, video production, or learning how to build brand systems so that you can come in there and work with companies to build out their branding systems. Then you have AI enabled services, automation setups, workflow design, AI assisted content and operations. Another thing that you can get into is cybersecurity and compliance. So, managed services for cybersecurities, doing audits, doing monitoring. Those are just a couple of cybersecurity and compliance things that you can do. You can get into education and training, creating courses, doing cohorts, or again, if you have transferable skills, work with companies as a subcontractor so that you can go in and train organizations for your particular skill sets, right? Then we also have to start getting into creative and IP based services. So that's things like design, animation. Think about all of the content we can be creating if we learn animation. Getting into licensing our content, learning how to license our content, and learning how to sell our content on the global market. And again, these are some things that would allow us to scale our knowledge, and we don't have to face the limitations that physical products or manufacturing or buy and sell businesses or reseller businesses or even purchasing franchises and having to remit all of those fees in a foreign currency. Service-based businesses get away from that. And here's the other thing. Right now, the UN has said that the Caribbean by 2027 will have the largest diaspora relation to population size. People don't leave the Caribbean because they hate home typically. They leave because opportunity is getting scarcer. People are living longer. We've raised the retirement ages, and I think in Trinidad they're going to raise it again, but I know that they've raised the retirement ages across the islands for the most part. People are living longer, they're working longer. Again, we live in small island developing states, so our economies, there's only so much room for the amount of people that we are graduating. So people are investing in their education, but when they leave when they get their degrees or when they get their certifications, the opportunities aren't there. So naturally, if the opportunity is not there, then they're going to leave and go and find a place that they can go to where the opportunity exists for them. So if more people can start earning globally while staying locally because they're getting into service-based businesses, migration slows down because now the opportunity is not tied to geography and they can stay in their home country while working remotely for a company or while being a subcontractor or a freelancer or starting a business and living home and doing it. Foreign exchange is going to increase because now we're servicing the global market and we're getting more people to pay us, and that's money that's going to be bringing in. And then if more money is coming into the country and each of us have more money to spend because more of us are working remotely and having global clients, then local spending, there's more money floating around in the economy to then go and spend, to then go and prop up all the other local businesses that are creating local products. Now we have additional disposable income to then go and spend with them, right? And that is how communities are going to be able to strengthen. So This could slow migration because now the main reason why people tend to leave is due to opportunities. So if we can slow that, then we're going to have more people to stay, and also they're going to be earning and contributing to our local economy. And it removes some of that friction with forced migration, since people would have to leave to go and find opportunities, right? But again, that's not to say people should not migrate. I firmly believe that one of the greatest weaknesses in the Caribbean is just a lack of perspective. I would love for more people in the Caribbean to go live in a whole other country. I don't care where it is at this point. If you can go and live in a whole other country for anywhere from like 1 to 5 years, when you come back with such a different state of mind. You've explored a new culture. If you were smart, you were looking at how things were done in your industry in that other country that you were in, and you would have been involved or try to get involved or try to gain experience. And you can come back and bring that back, and then you can really appreciate what we have locally, what there is abroad, and then you can really see where the gaps are locally, so that now you can have a better input into how to go about fixing a lot of the problems that we face. All right. So I firmly believe that we need to have more service based businesses so that we can slow that forced migration. But then, if people learn skill sets and they want to migrate, now is a good time to look at other countries, look at the talent visas, look at the digital nomad visas, whatever the case is. Go and experience another country and come back. Come back, or even if you don't come back, find ways to still contribute back home. Because look, I still do everything. My business is still Caribbean based. I still teach in in Arthur Lockjack with UE. I'm still on media in Trinidad and in Jamaica. So all the workshops I still do are still Caribbean wide. So I'm still contributing, even though I'm soaking up all of the knowledge and stuff, that's happening out here in Asia. So 2026, I need you to start asking yourself some simple questions. If you want to start a business this year, ask yourself, do I need a large ongoing amount of USD to operate? Can I start earning US dollars or any other currency within 3 to 6 months? Is my business model exposed to shipping or any energy shocks? Can this business scale beyond my island? If spending drops 30%, can I survive? Does this build globally transferable skills? And when you answer those questions, be honest with yourself. If the answers don't look good, it's the wrong business for this moment. So, again, I'm not saying abandon physical businesses. I'm not saying abandon manufacturing or abandon tourism. We need balance, and we need to really confront the new world that we are in. We need to be honest about the bottlenecks. We need to be honest about the challenges and limitations of our geography. And we need to navigate this thing a whole lot better than we are, because the Caribbean needs fewer import heavy foreign exchange draining businesses. We need more service based businesses that are going to generate foreign exchange for all of our countries. 2026 is that year that we are going to be forced to pivot. And those who adapt early will have options, and those who cling to old models are going to feel pressure like they've never felt pressure before. But again, we're not about to panic. Nope. But now we have to start building smarter. We have to build earlier, and we need to build with the world that we are in. We need to build with we need to keep in mind the world that we are in and the realities of the world that we are in when we are creating these new businesses. Because again, it doesn't make sense. You decide, okay, I'm going to go and create this new product, this new brand of soap, this new brand of ice cream, and then you're only limited to selling locally. And if the country is not bringing in new money and jobs more people are being laid off from their jobs and they just don't have the disposable income, we're not coming to buy ice cream on Sunday because we don't have it. We're not spending money as frivolously as we once were because now we're being more mindful of our spend, and we want to try to get as much value for what we do buy, which is going to force us now to start looking at outside options beyond the local market. All right. So if we can get more service-based businesses, whether you're a solopreneur, whether you're a small team, whether you're a big organization looking to shift, if we can get into more service-based businesses, that's going to circumvent a lot of the bottlenecks that we have, being the fact that we live in the Caribbean. So we know logistics is a problem. We know climate change is a problem. We know some countries have restrictions with foreign exchange. These problems are real and they're only getting worse, as we have clearly seen. But if we can think a bit more digital, and if we can start thinking about service-based businesses that we can get involved with, this can ease the burden greatly. Just imagine if we had a 10% uptick in creating more service-based businesses, where that 10% increase, they were now getting paid in a foreign currency, and we were able to bring that into our economy. Think about that, what that would do for our communities, right? So those are the types of businesses that we should start looking at and getting into, right? And I mean, listen, what you can do if you need help, jump into a ChatGPT, a DeepSeek, or Google Gemini, and just straight up just ask it. Say, hey, I'm looking to either start a side business or a full-time or a service-based business. I want you to interview me, ask me 10 questions one by one, interview me so we can learn more about me and what would be the best service-based business that I can get into. Even a simple prompt like that can yield great results and put you on the right path moving forward. All right? So I hope this episode got you thinking. I hope it planted a seed for 2026. This wasn't to, put fear, but this is a episode to really just put this out in the open and get you thinking. Yeah? If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget, if you're listening from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, don't forget to like the podcast, drop your comments. I read the comments. The comments help continue to grow the Digipreneur FM family all across the world. Don't forget, you can learn more about building your digital presence and monetizing your platforms at KaronRose.com. And then you can stay up to date with all things happening with the podcast at digipreneur.fm. It is a Monday. I am your boy, Karon Rose, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Look forward to talking to you in the next one. Take care.
You've been listening to the Digiboss, Karon Rose. We hope your notepad was filled after this episode. Make sure to like, rate, and review the show. The learning doesn't stop, folks. And to make sure you don't miss any gems from the Digiboss, go over and follow him on all social media platforms at Karon Rose. Folks, don't just sit there with a notepad. We need you to implement at least one thing into your business before the next episode. That's the only way your business levels up. Thanks for listening to Digipreneur FM. Now go be great.